Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we've got more severe storms on the way for today, but a big pattern change is going to follow with much cooler anomalies that will extend into this weekend and into much of next week, especially across the central U.S. So let's take a look at the overall 500 millibar going forward. We still have this ridge of high pressure that's been pretty dominant across a good part of the West and the Pacific Northwest. We've got numerous records almost being broken on a daily basis. But what really stands out is the significant trough that's really setting up across the central U.S., those areas across the upper Midwest, getting into the plains. We're still dealing with the warm conditions, if not hot conditions, out ahead of this significant trough. But that is going to lead to more severe storms. And what was the culprit of all the severe weather that unfolded yesterday across the upper Midwest? And it was really compliments of the powerful upper level winds, and those winds transferred down to the surface. And we saw a lot of significant winds yesterday, with in fact even a kind of a derecho forming last night. And you can take a look at the overall 24-hour storm reports from the Storm Prediction Center, and we had some very high winds that were reported across a good part of Wyoming. But that mesoscale convective complex really started to blow up with a cluster of storms that really kind of congealed together. We had some significant wind gusts in Iowa around 86 miles an hour. We had one report of 97 miles an hour, and then we had these QLCS tornadoes spin up on the leading edge. Numerous tornado warnings in and around the Chicago region last night, and those continued into the overnight across Indiana. We also had a pocket of energy that really amplified and implemented those areas across Pennsylvania as well as into New York. So we've had a lot of severe storms, and unfortunately we're going to have more today as that trough really starts to continue to deepen and dig across the upper Midwest, and as it taps into that warm sector with the upper level wind still pretty prevalent, that is going to lead to more severe storms. Unfortunately, later on this afternoon, we are actually getting some storms this morning in and around Missouri, but I think those are going to intensify again as we heat up the atmosphere later on this afternoon into the evening time frame. So there's going to be two pockets of energy across the upper Midwest and portions of the Central Plains here. There's also again another pocket of energy that's going to be impacting those areas across the Northeast. So if you live in the Nebraska region down to Kansas, all the way in through Oklahoma, those extend into Missouri, back into southern portions of Illinois, getting into Kentucky. And then once you get up into the Northeast, again, unfortunately, across Pennsylvania, upstate New York, getting into Vermont and New Hampshire, those are going to be bumpy with very high wind producers, with an isolated tornado threat and some larger hail you're going to have to contend with those severe storms. So you can look at the temperatures for the middle of July standards, and you can see where the significant trough is across a good part of the Dakotas, much of Minnesota, into Wisconsin. They're going to be benefiting first of the extended cool down, what's to come. But further south, you're going to be amplified. Actually, some of the warmest temperatures so far this season, about 104 in Oklahoma City today, 104 in Wichita Falls, around 102 in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. You can see upper 90s, if not almost triple digits across the East Coast, out ahead of that significant trough. So here's where we have some storm development this morning. We've got another mesoscale convective complex. There's been several severe thunderstorm warnings that does in fact include some 70-mile-per-hour wind gust in and around the Missouri region, getting into portions of southern Illinois. You can take a look further south. I mean, the tropics are pretty quiet right now. We've got a lot of that Saharan dust that is mixed in off the coast of Africa that came across a good part of the Caribbean, getting much into the Gulf of Mexico. And actually, some of that dust is actually transferred into portions of Texas, into Oklahoma, as well as into Florida. But you won't be seeing that dust once the cold front moves through, and that significant change that will be on the way. So you got one more day to kind of deal with that dust before the change comes your way. But later on this afternoon, there's the storm complex out ahead of the cool front, where we are going to be looking at several convective complexes again that will blow up in the heat of the afternoon across Kansas, portions of Oklahoma into the evening time frame. Those will swing across Missouri, getting into southern Illinois, getting into Indiana, as well as Ohio. And then there's a second pocket of energy that will impact for those areas across Pennsylvania, getting into New York, and those will eventually kind of sneak into Vermont and New Hampshire, getting down into Massachusetts, as well as Connecticut. We'll also have some kind of sea breeze action for Florida, so you are going to contend with afternoon storms for them. But these winds are going to be strong, likely not as significant as we saw yesterday, but these are still going to be packing a punch for those areas across upstate New York, getting into Vermont and New Hampshire. Some of those wind gusts could be approaching 60, if not 70 miles an hour. I think the more intense winds are going to be more into the 70, if not almost 75 mile per hour range for those areas across Oklahoma, Oklahoma here, getting into Arkansas, as well as into Missouri. And for those areas as well into southern portions of Illinois, as getting into Kentucky for today. And where you see kind of the darker reds, I think that's where the most intense severe storms are likely going to be, with the more significant winds. And it kind of paints a bullseye across a good part of southeastern portions of Missouri, getting into southern Illinois, and also a good pocket of New York, as well as into Vermont and New Hampshire. And then I think as we get into tonight, those will dive southbound into Oklahoma. So after you do top out well into the triple digits this afternoon, that significant change is going to be on the way, and that is going to be leading to that severe storms that you're going to have to contend with later on tonight in and around the Oklahoma region. And as we head into tomorrow, as that cool front will continue to dive southbound, now we're talking areas in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area as we get into early evening time frame, could pick up some stronger storm activity, and right along into the southeast as well, out ahead of the cool front. But you can see where the brown is. That's where the drier air will come back behind it, and much pleasant light conditions and much cooler anomalies back behind it. So where the setup and the storms really take shape across a good part of Wednesday is really for these monsoonal rains that impacting portions of Arizona. In fact, even Phoenix yesterday picked up 1/3 of an inch of rainfall. So that is welcome news for that area out there, and welcome news for areas of New Mexico getting some beneficial rains. But you can see where the cool front is, and the storms that come along with it across good part of North Texas, getting into Arkansas, back into Tennessee, as well as into Kentucky, getting into West Virginia, and those northern branches of Virginia getting into the day on Wednesday. And then as we head into Thursday, there's those 10 to 15 degree cooler temperature anomalies really starting to take shape across a good part of the upper Midwest, northern plains here, and that will eventually bleed into Oklahoma, Arkansas, and eventually back into North Texas with that cooler shot of air. And you can see the temperature drop as we get into Thursday, with those 90s being replaced with widespread 70s across a good part of Iowa, back into Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. So yeah, you had to contend with the severe storms for a day or two, but the prize is at the end of the tunnel with just extremely nice weather and very pleasant light conditions back behind that cool front. So definitely be looking forward to that. And I think that just extends further south into Thursday, as that cool front will be draped across a good part of central Texas, bringing that storm activity for them. And that will eventually get into those areas across the southeast as that cooler air continues to seep further south. And even heading into the weekend, it's going to try to rebound a little bit. For the most part, though, a good part of the central U.S. continues going to remain below average, with those cooler anomalies impacting that region. And for those areas across the west and a good part of the Pacific Northwest, and especially like British Columbia, Montana, those areas aren't really going to cool down in any form of fashion, as you're going to be experiencing that ridge of high pressure that's just going to be kind of locked and amplified over your area. And I think that just continues with a reinforcing shot as we head into Sunday. So we are going to try to rebound a little bit, but we'll have another reinforcing shot with northwest flow. And kind of rare to even talk about northwest flow, such late into July, but we are going to be looking at those conditions, and that's going to bring another fairly significant trough across the Central Plains and reinforce those cooler anomalies. In fact, even get a little bit cooler for those areas across the central U.S. and actually bring a little bit stronger storm activity as we head into Sunday for those areas further south. So now we're talking New Mexico, a good part of Texas and Oklahoma, a good part of the Southeast. You're going to be dealing with those showers and thunderstorms along with the reinforcing shot of cooler air, and kind of rare to see. I mean, this would be July 23rd, folks. I mean, to see 5, 10, 15 degrees below average for a good part of the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. That is definitely a welcome sight, because this is typically supposed to be the hottest time of the year. So obviously your averages are the hottest they're ever going to be for the entire year. So whenever you can cool that part down another 5, 10, maybe even sometimes 15 degrees, that is going to be feeling really nice and to the heart of summer. And you can actually see where the temperatures could land by the time we head into Monday. You got widespread 70s across a good part of the upper Midwest, much of the Central Plains, and even the Southern Plains get into the action with the 80s. It'd be nice to feel 80 degrees down there in the Houston Metroplex there, with the 80s drifting all the way down into the deep South, getting into the Southeast. So this is going to be feeling really pleasant and really nice back behind that more significant cool shot. And that's exactly what the Climate Prediction Center has, that reinforcing shot of cooler air bleeding down into the Central Plains, with the 90% below average anomalies for this time of year. So that is going to be definitely a welcome cool shot, and not going to feel like any stretch of the imagination of end of July, and especially what it felt like a good part of last year, when they dealt with all that record heat and well into the triple digits for days and days and days. But yes, unfortunately, those areas across the West and those areas into Idaho and to Montana, British Columbia, are not going to actually experience the cool down. And where you see the cool down, that's where you're going to have more instabilities and bring those much needed rain showers back into the monsoonal flow of the desert Southwest, a good part of the Southern Plains, as well as into the Southeast. So these will kind of be daily showers and thunderstorms activity as we head into next week. And even beyond that, folks, this looks to be in a kind of an extended cool down, if you will. We might put together a good week, or if not almost 10 days across a good part of the Central Plains that are going to be below average, comparable to what you would typically get for this time of year. And it's also going to be increasing those storm threat and the showers and thunderstorms as well across that region, as it will continue to remain in that northwest flow and kind of unsettled as we get into much of next week. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update, why I protect you before and after the storm.